this way by repetition. So let's look at what we have to do after that. So we're here right now. We're going to restart the virtual machine. So the next thing we're going to do actually is change the name to Server1 for the computer name, because obviously when you install when you install this server, it gives it a default name, which is kind of a little weird, but we need to change the name and then join the domain. So let's do that. Now we've set the IP addresses to point to the SQL server.com. We can actually join it. So this is where we are right now, is changing the name. So let's look at where we are. And there we go. I think we're started. It may pop up, and that's fine. So what do we need to do now? We said change the computer name. To change the computer name and join the domain, I'm going to do that simultaneously. Press on the Windows. Go to right-click and go to Properties. And here we're going to change the name. So go to Change Settings. Go to Change. And here we want to call it the same thing as we did. Server1. And at the same time, let's this back thing, and we'll correct that in a second. At the same time, we're going to join the SQL. So type in caps SQL and go OK. And now we're going to join the domain and change the computer name. And there we go. And remember, now the username that I'm going to use is the domain user cluster admin, because that has domain right on caps. And go OK. And hopefully we'll join the domain, and there we are. And we may have to reboot, which is fine, and restart the computer now. So as you can see, we've already joined the domain, but it'll actually do it once we restart it. So let's look at our notes. So we've joined the domain, starts the server from cluster admin account. So rather than using the local admin account now, I'm going to be using the domain account, which is the cluster admin. So this way we don't have to constantly change and remember different admin accounts. So let's do that right now, right here. So let's see if it comes up, and we'll continue. So all this documentation that I'm providing you with the IP addresses and so on will be provided for you. As I said, now we're going to repeat this process a couple more times, and you'll get a very good understanding by the time we've finished with this of how to really assign and join domains. I think that was some of the, about 4 or 5 students were a little confused as to how to join domains, and they had problems with it and not understanding the IP addresses. So hopefully this will explain it when we do it. Now, obviously, we don't want to join this, the local. We want to join other. So now here, take cluster admin. And there we go. So there's a couple of configuration properties that we have to do, and then we're good. And now we're going to install SQL 2014, I think. I don't think we're going to go to 16. I think we'll install 2014. And I just want to double check now. Obviously, we want to disengage this server management pop-up constantly. I think that's one of the things we want to do. So this, and then IE, and then the sharing. So it needs to sign out for the virtual tool. So let's join back in. There we go. And we're almost there. So obviously this server manager keeps popping up. So let's disable it. And the way to do that, remember, is go to Manage, Server Manage Properties, and then we're going to pop up Windows, going to say Disable, and we can do that right now. And then we'll just confirm it's part of the SQL domain, and we can get rid of this. Windows, Computer, and you'll see now, obviously, we belong to SQL domain right here. There we go. So that's great, and we've changed the name. So far, so good. So the last thing we want to do now is do this right here, and then the sharing. So let's go back to our server. Actually, I do need to open this for a second. What I want you to do to go to local server, let it populate, and here, IE enhancement, click on, and turn them off so we don't have to constantly, when we go to the internet, pop in those addresses, and that's cleared. Okay. Then the last thing we want to do is set the option for enabling sharing of folders. So that's a great feature for virtual environments. And what I mean by that is this. Here you'll notice here, this ribbon, as I mentioned below, belongs to my desktop. It is not part of the virtual machines. So if I go over here, and if I click on this, and if I click on software, you'll see all this software belongs on the C drive on my local computer, not on the virtual machine. So in order to access this, we have to share folders. So this is what I'm going to do right now. So on your virtual machine, how do we share it? The way you do that is go Player, Manage, Virtual Machine Settings, and then Options. And then click here, Shared Folder. And we're going to always enable it. We're going to also map it, so we have a mapped network drive, and then Add. And this will now direct us to any directory we want. In our case, C drive. So here it is. Now this is my computer. This is not a virtual machine. So we want to go to C drive. And we want to go to the folder called Software, and OK. And then go Next and Finish. And as soon as I go OK, and now if I go to Windows, Computer, you'll see that the shared folder is being mapped. And now I can access this folder right here, this entire hardware, or whatever I've designated. And if I open it, you can see what we have here. So that's a great way, and we're going to need this in a second when we do the SSMS. So we can close that. So that's how you share drives when you're in a virtual machine. So I think that's entirely done now. We've created our first VM, Server1, and we've followed this protocol. And what we're going to do now is to repeat the entire process for Virtual 2. The only thing that's going to be different, actually, is I'm going to be naming it Server 2 as opposed to Server 1. And I'm just going to change the IP address to 52 as opposed to 51. Other than that, what you just saw, I'm going to repeat entirely again. And then I'm going to do it for 3, but I'm going to do it a little faster. But by the time you finish it, you'll have a good understanding of it also. So I think I'll leave it here and make sure we're good on that. And let's close this, make sure we've got populated. So if I go here and double click it, you'll see that I've got Server 1 and DC. Now, unfortunately, because this VM Workstation 12 player is free, it doesn't have all the features that I'd like, such as having tabs here that will allow me to control each of these virtual machines. Now, obviously, if you want to upgrade to Virtual Pro, you can, but I think there's a cost of $50 or $75 or $100 or something like that. For our purposes, we don't need it. It's a little more cumbersome for me, but we can just look at these views from here rather than having tabs. But it obviously, additionally, it is a great thing to have. But again, it's not necessary. So I think we're good, and we can close this. And the honest truth is that when we actually get into HA Solutions, we're going to probably be opening only 2 windows at a time. So we're not going to be opening the DC. That will be in the background. We'll just open Server 1 and Server 2, or Server 2 and Server 3. And so we can have them side by side. So we really don't need the tabs for our demonstration purposes. So as I said, this is done now. And the next thing I want to do is install SQL 2014 on Server 1. And then I'm going to repeat the entire process again. So I'll leave it here. And my name is Raphael, and this is how to become a production SQL database administrator. See you in the next video.